Thank you, everyone, for coming to another Reltio Community Show. I'm Chris Detzel, and today's topic is a little bit different than usual. We are doing this kind of the, just a Q&A style, but today's session is Unleash Data's Competitive Edge. We have two special guests that I'm really excited about having on today's show, and I'll have them introduce themselves after I go through some of this, but we do have Gurpinder, Singh, Dhillon. He's a VP and business segment leader at Dun & Bradstreet. Welcome, Gurpinder. Really excited to have you.
Thank you, Chris.
And we have Venki, Subramanian. He's a senior VP of product management at Reltio. A lot of you know him or have seen him. So welcome, Venki. Thank you for coming. And of course, myself. And I will be moderating today's session. So the rules of this show or the webinar is keep yourself on mute. All questions should be asked in the chat, or feel free to take yourself off mute and you can ask. That's kind of always been the rules if you've not attended these. The show will be recorded and posted to the Reltio community. I'll be sending out an email to everyone that registered and attended this show or webinar a day or two after. So here's some upcoming shows. Today's show is Unleash Data's Competitive Edge. We have one next week called Ask Me Anything. So it's a little bit more technical around Reltio's LCA, life cycle action, and DVF, action validation functions. We went deep a few weeks ago. There was tons of questions around this area. So if you're interested in talking to the expert around that. And then on the 9th of November, we have Accelerate Custom Workflow Development. It will be very technical, but there's some changes that we made within the workflow of Reltio that we are excited to show and go deep within that piece. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen real quick and hand it over to Gurpinder and let you tell us a little bit about you and who you are.
Thank you so much, Chris. Hey, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. I'm really excited to be here today with Chris and Venki to talk about this topic, which is very close to my heart. As Chris mentioned, I work at Dun & Bradstreet, which is a data organization. We have been in the business of data management for over 180 years. I'm very passionate about data, which is why I chose to work at Dun & Bradstreet. And my role here is the VP of Data Management segment. So I'm responsible for the overall business strategy and P&L and making sure we have capability solutions and partnerships that help our customers be successful and help them uncover and unleash the competitive advantage that data offers to them. Personally, I am based out of Toronto, Canada. I've been here for many years. I have two kids, boy and a girl. And as I mentioned, I love data, and I'm actually pursuing a PhD in data management as well. So the impact of data quality on business performance. So this topic is very relevant, and I'm very excited to be here.
Perfect. Venki.
Great. Well, like Gurpinder said, I'm also really excited to be here and great to be sharing this session with you, Gurpinder, and with Chris. I lead product management at Reltio. My responsibilities span, all of the product strategy, roadmap, working with our technology teams to deliver all the wonderful capabilities that you, our customers and partners, leverage every day. Really excited about the possibilities that data can provide for businesses. There is this very widely used adage that data is the new oil, right? And that is so true. It is a strategic capability. What our purpose is at Reltio is to help organizations really make it act as a strategic capability, unlock it from its the silos in the nooks and crannies of different organizations, and really bring it to the forefront and create the foundations that are required to use it as a strategic capability. We've been partners with Dun & Bradstreet on this journey for several years now. I personally have been at Reltio for 4 years, and I've been working with Gurpinder and team from the beginning. But my association with D&B as an organization goes way before. Over a decade back, I've been in companies like SAP and ServiceNow, where I've worked with D&B as a data provider, as a data partner in the space. In terms of my background, I come primarily with a decade of experience in enterprise software, focusing on customer experience, customer relationship management, and all that. And in all of those places, if you look at what is the foundation of that, it's really the customer data, right? And that's probably one of the largest data sets that every company utilizes. So in today's session, again, we'll go more into the details of how we can look at data as the strategic capability for every company and unleash the competitive edge.
Thank you both. And, as we kind of look at, there's basically 4 themes that we'll take a look at and answer some questions, and we'll get right into that here shortly. But one is enhancing data quality and accuracy. 2 is establishing a robust kind of data governance and how others are thinking about that and doing that. And leveraging, the other one is leverage complete and connected data. And then how do you stay ahead amid, technology shifts and the new regulations? It's a big one. So when I kind of look at kind of this first area and topic, the importance of data supporting business outcomes is big. What are some of the strategies that are in place to ensure that data solutions are adaptable to those technology shifts, such as the advancements of AI and machine learning that we've heard a lot this year? Gurpinder, I'll kind of hand it over to you first, and then Venki.
Yeah, sure, Chris. That's a great question. And in fact, this is a question that everyone's been sort of, toying around with, especially with the emergence of Gen AI lately, right? So as you said, as it comes to advancements in AI and machine learning. So some of the strategies that we have, undertaken at Dun & Bradstreet is to really make sure that we understand the impact, not just the emergence of the technology, but what is the true impact of that technological advancement to the life of a data manager or a data analyst. So in that context, we look at it closely and we monitor it. And then we look at those capabilities, and then we try to apply those capabilities to the solutions that we offer to our customers. So for example, when it comes to Gen AI, everyone wants to just jump in and offer something. But the key issue that our customers face, and we see in the industry that we want to address, is how do we offer governance structure and trust mechanism built around Gen AI capability, so that when you're making business decisions, you're not just making business decisions on something which comes out of a black box. Right now, the explainability is very poor when it comes to Gen AI capabilities. And our goal at D&B from strategy perspective is to uncover that black box and make it apparent and transparent to the end user. So when you ask, as an example, if you ask a chatbot a question, and you get an answer back, there's some level of explainability to that answer. You're not just blindly trusting the outcome out of that box, right? So that's one key capability. The second strategy that we're undertaking also in a similar front is the quality and the foundation of the data that goes into these mechanisms like machine learning algorithms, large language models, right? Making sure that the quality of the data is high to generate a response which could be used as a competitive advantage for the customer. To do that, we're leveraging a lot of internal workflows and mechanisms going back to, as I mentioned, 180 plus years. We have learned so much on how to manage data, how to make sure that the quality of the data is what is needed for a business decision. So we're applying that traditional mechanism along with the machine learning capabilities and mechanisms to profile the quality of information coming in and then making it available to the customer so that it could be deployed and availed through these new technological enhancements that our customers come to expect.
Venki?
Yeah, Gurpinder, you summarized it, quite well, and a couple of areas that every organization should prioritize, right, in the context of these technological shifts. But you also started with how it needs to be aligned to the business outcomes, and that's exactly what I hear in my conversations with the CDAOs and VPs of data and analytics. Everyone jumps in and looks at technology. Technology obviously is very exciting, but it has to be in service of the key business outcomes that every company is trying to drive, right? So even AI, it's no different. And then when you start looking at how do I drive those better outcomes with high quality data, the first thing that comes up is the quality of data, right? Do I have the right data? Do I have the right quality of data? So In terms of, there is an interesting study actually recently published by Workday. It's a public resource that is available. So if you search, you will find it, which actually says about 80% of every data leader are actually saying that, they're going to increase their investments in AI. And that's no surprise, but about 78% of them also say that the trust gap in the data, not having the right data or the right quality of data, is what is holding them back. Now, the interesting thing here is AI essentially increases the visibility or the need for these capabilities, right? High quality data and things like that. But AI also is an enabler for getting that data together and getting the quality of the data up in organizations. And Gurpinder, just like you said, we are incorporating those capabilities into our platform, where we are looking at how do we automatically, without, the traditional way of defining complex rules and things like that, how do we identify duplicates across data? How do we use it for entity resolution or identity resolution, as an example, where machine learning models specific to industry segments and specific to data domains can be created that can dramatically reduce the value and reduce the time and improve the quality of the data that gets created as a result of it. We are looking at similar applications of AI in data profiling or in other areas, all through the pipeline. How do we improve the quality? And then the other thing is, even when you look at stewardship, the people who are actually responsible in organizations to look at the data, to take decisions about data, to ultimately deliver that high quality data, the traditional approach was to throw people at the problem, right? We needed more data stewards to look at it and solve it. That's not going to scale. We all know that it's not going to scale. So again, how do we apply technology in an intelligent fashion? Can we surface exceptions and anomalies automatically through the applications of these modern technologies, AI, machine learning methods, to a data steward? Can we provide simpler conversational experiences where data steward can ask questions and interact with the system naturally to find the right segments or subsegments of data, or instruct the system to take action to improve the quality of data? A lot of these possibilities that we are now applying, and you will start seeing productized versions of these coming out from us and many other software vendors. And I'm sure, I'm excited to see some of the advancements in this area from DNV as well.
Great. And so kind of moving on to like the trust gap or data quality and governance. What are the biggest misconceptions that companies have about establishing a robust, data governance practice, and how do you propose they overcome them? Because it's a tough one. And I'll let Gurpinder go first again, but then I'll let you go next, Venki, and then we'll switch it around next time.
Yeah, so data governance, Chris, this is a topic which a lot of people want to stay away from, right? Because data governance, it has a lot, right? There's a lot to unpack in data governance, which is why, people and companies that I talk to on a daily basis, they're still struggling to figure out what does governance really mean, and how do I go about, setting up data governance or effective data governance within my organization. And there's a couple of misconceptions, or not even misconceptions. I would even just say that just lack of information, right, which leads to these misconceptions at organizations. One of the biggest one is that data governance is just IT's responsibility. I'm going to get a product and it's going to magically fix my data governance and take care of it. That is the most common one that I come across. And as we all know, being the data professionals in the industry, that is not the case. IT alone, IT definitely is there to support and help. These platforms that we have created for MDM, data management, they're there to assist with data governance. But just to say that they're going to by themselves be the end solution is wrong. And I think it's also an unjust expectation on platform providers and the IT department. Because in order for the data governance to be effective, you need to make sure that you have the business side also a part of the equation when it comes to data governance, right? So they're the ones that really understand the data that is being used, but also the data that is being supplied, which flows across the organization. And you have to make sure that the data governance committee is formed with a cross-functional stakeholder team versus just having the IT, the only provider. So that's one. The second thing is that some people think that if they do data governance one and it's done, that's it, right? It's like a one-time project. and then if they execute it effectively in the beginning of an initiative, data governance is taken care of. Again, that is not the case. Data governance is an ongoing long-term process and capability that has to be, forefront of mind for the organization. As I mentioned earlier, if you have a stakeholder community and you have business stakeholders part of the data governance initiative, then you could sort of set it up that it's an ongoing workflow where people don't feel like data governance is a burden, that they have to spend a lot of time on data governance, but it becomes a part of their daily routine, right? So there's others, but these are the two key ones, Chris, that I think are worth highlighting because these are the ones that I come across most often. Venki, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you've pretty much covered most of the areas. I mean, I think if I were to summarize some of the things, right? First is data governance is not a technology solution. You started with that, right? Someone thinks that, oh, I brought this, it's IT's responsibility. I bring in this tool and magically everything gets solved. Not at all, right? We all know from our experience in this space that it is as much of a process and culture, change that is needed in the organization as much as a technology capability that is needed in an organization, right? So governance really needs to be looked at holistically, and the organizational buy-in is extremely important for companies to establish the right kind of a governance process. But even before that, right, we should really ask about why do we need governance? Because the other thing that I've noticed is there are almost two camps. There are people who absolutely think that governance is extremely important, should be built into the foundations of any data stack that you build. But at the same time, there is the other camp that hears the word governance and immediately says, "Oh, you're going to slow me down." Right? You're the data police that comes and stops all kind of access. I need access to data. You're the people who comes and stops me from getting access to the data that I need.
Just one other thing. Sorry, Venki, go ahead. I was going to highlight one other thing.
No, I think so. I think what I'm saying is, we need to bridge that gap and really highlight the importance of why organizations need to invest in governance as a process, as a methodology, and infuse that as part of the culture so that it can be a success. But without that, we will always be in this difficult area where you're trying to democratize the access to data. You need more people to be empowered with data, but without the right controls, you're exposing yourselves to a lot of risk. And that is not something we can afford to have in organizations. So that's my point of view.
Yeah. So just one other thing that I want to highlight that just came to mind because I, recently ran across this with a customer is that sometimes people think that data governance is a nice to have, right? They don't realize that this isn't really a nice to have. There's so many implications of not having a data governance process in place. You have the compliance regulations and rules that you have to adhere to. So if you don't have that, if you don't do that, then there's a lot of fines that you could, face as a part of it, depending on where you're doing business. The other thing, just in summary of all this is really that, there are misconceptions about data governance that often, as I mentioned earlier, they stem from a limited understanding of its scope, benefits, and implications. So sometimes, all you need to do is really just set up some educational activity within the organization to make sure that people understand the value that it delivers. It's not just really a cost center. There's a lot of benefit. There's ROI that comes out of properly governed data assets, especially if you want to use data as your competitive advantage and edge.
Yeah, very well said to both of you. And I think data governance is hard, and like you said, I mean, some people see it as kind of a, oh my gosh, they're blocking me to do these things. They're making it harder to do those things. But I like the education piece. And if you make the education kind of, friendly to where people understand, because not everybody understands the language of data and how important it is and things like that. But I think very good points to both of you.
And Chris, one more thing I want to highlight again that is very relevant in the times we are living in, right? With the increased sort of visibility and the excitement around AI, we're also hearing lawsuits. I think there are multiple that you can read in the news nowadays about companies like OpenAI getting sued from for training their data using books that were published at certain time and things like that. So every organization is actually going to encounter this problem where for organizations, for us to actually leverage the data in a responsible manner, we need the data to be available and used, but it needs to be done in the right manner. So it's that fine balance again, where AI is not possible without access to data, right? AI's foundation essentially is the data that you can feed into it, but we need the right governance process. But it should not be looked at as a hindrance, as a thing that slows things down, but really look at it in the right context so that we can do both, right? We can get access to the data and utilize it in the right manner, but also do it in a compliant and safe, risk-free manner.
Yep. So Venki, in an era where data volume is exploding, I mean, it's insanity. What innovative approaches is Reltio implementing to maintain high data quality and accuracy? And then Gurpinder, after Venki answers, same question about Dun & Bradstreet.
Yeah, so again, I'll answer it in the context of how we work with our customers to help them improve the quality of their data, right? First of all, you're absolutely right. With the SaaS applications, there is a proliferation of applications. There is on an average maybe about 1,000+ application that an organization would be using. And if you go into large enterprises, that number might be even much higher. Okta publishes a report every year that gives you those averages on the number of applications that are being used. And you can imagine how much of fragmentation and quality issues that might create, right? So first and foremost is the ability to bring a large set of data into a single consolidated repository and then use that as a place to determine the right versions, what used to be called as a single source of truth versions of that data, which is essentially the foundation of what Reltio does, right? We are the provider of data unification capability that can bring that data from multiple sources and unify. A key part of what we do there, and the reason for our partnership, a strong partnership with DNB, is a lot of that information is not available inside the four walls of an organization. We have to rely on authentic, trusted repositories of data like DNB for organizations and contacts and all of that. And that actually provides a huge boost to improving the quality of data, getting the right data, enriching or missing or filling in the blanks of the data that exists in organizations, and making sure that you're using trusted versions of that data for making your business decisions or for running your operations, right? So that is the other piece. And last but not least, throughout that process, if you think of that pipeline of data that you're creating all the way from the sources to the different consuming systems, at every step, how do you infuse capabilities that can inspect the data, surface issues, anomalies, maybe even automatically remediate those kind of things? And that is where we have data quality capabilities built into our platform to be able to improve the quality of data that gets consumed. And last is the speed at which this entire process can be run, right? Real time is the need of the day right now. Like every data needs to be available in as short a time frame as possible for the consuming systems, and that consuming the data that the consuming systems use should be as closely matched to or aligned to the places where the data is created. So we cannot afford to have long delays where I updated this address in my source system, but it takes 2 days for the consuming system to get that data. So that means there is a discrepancy that exists for that long, right? Those kind of delays we cannot afford to have in the digital world that we are living in. So that is the other part of, how do we compress the time for the data to be available for consuming systems from wherever the data is originating in the source systems in the shortest possible time.
Thanks, Venki. Gurpinder?
Yeah, so just to build on that, what Venki said, Chris, and also share, our previous CEO used to say that, everything we touch turns into data, and that is so relevant and true, right? Especially now we have so many IoT systems and all the stuff. And even McKinsey, they did a study or a survey in which they basically said technology disruption over the next few years is going to equal the industrial revolution. So I think we're already in that time frame with all the technology coming in, which is, if you really peel the onion, technology, a lot of the technology emerging is all built on data. So the explosion of that data means that we have to make sure, just going back to my earlier comment and Venki's comment, that the quality and the foundation is solid, right, for the technology and all these tools and capabilities that we really want to use as an advantage to us. So some of the things that we are undertaking is, again, being a data company, we want to make sure that we have the quality checks built into every single solution that we provide back to our customer. So before data goes out to a customer through an application, we want to check to make sure that we're monitoring the data quality. We want to identify any anomalies, inconsistencies, and errors that might be there in the source where the data is coming from before we make it available to the customer. The second thing is using machine learning and AI capabilities, right? So there's only so much you can do manually given the volume of the data. You have to rely on machine learning algorithms and AI. So we're utilizing that. We're utilizing that with the governance in mind as well. So we're not blindly trusting what comes out of machine learning and AI. We're thoroughly testing that and validating it, but we're then putting that into practice. We maintain data catalogs and metadata management processes in place. And in fact, with the Reltio's platform, we have some of that built in as well. And then finally, data profiling and data preparation tools, which help basically, prepare the data so that it's clean and it's transformed, it's in the right standardized format before the data makes its way out to the customer. Because the reality is, right, once you have a piece of data out there in the hands of the end consumer, it is 10 times more difficult to correct the problem once it's out there versus trying to correct the problem at the source. So that is always the intent that we have in mind. Find and correct the data quality issue right at the source level before we make it available to the customer.
Anything else, Venki, that you wanted to add to that, or?
No, I think that summarizes it quite well.
So that was really good. Thank you both. And I've been dying to ask this question because it's a good one, I think. How do you approach the challenge of integrating? Just a sec. All right. So how do you approach the challenge of integrating unstructured data with structured data in MDM solution? And what benefits have clients observed from this integration? I'm going to let Gurpinder kind of take that, and then I'll ask you, Venki, because I know you have a bunch of thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that question is very relevant to Venki. So yes, let me start, and then I'll pass it over. So when it comes to MDM, up until now, it has really been around, the data has to be in some level of structure and standardized before, we can create that source of truth. But what we are seeing, and going back to our previous question, which was, the explosion of data coming in, it's not always possible to have a structured data set. So you're going to run into issues or scenarios where you have systems that are producing unstructured data as well. So when it comes to our capabilities, and as Venki mentioned, we do have a partnership where we use Reltio platform alongside DNB data to address that as a concern. But also, before we go into that, when we are getting a customer's data that may not be going through a platform of mastering, we take that information, we send it through this process called done right process that DNB has created. It's like a 7-step process where we take the information, we try to understand the anomalies and the quality issues from structure and unstructured perspective, and then we try to put some level of structure, using machine learning and AI on top of it before we can match it to a DUNS number. So that's the process we always follow. Every time a record or inquiry comes in, it goes through this process regardless of structure or unstructured. If we are able to then identify a DUNS number for an unstructured data source, we will do that. In cases where it's difficult for us to bring the structure and bring the two records together, then we have some manual capabilities that we layer on top of it, and we try to steward that. But Chris, to your question, it's always a challenge. No matter how advanced we get in technology, the unstructured data assets continue to pose a problem. It's a problem that can be addressed, but it takes time.
And Gurpinder, you might also want to touch upon how DNB itself, ingests large amounts of unstructured data and converts it into a structured form that can be consumed, right?
Exactly. So that was my point around the sources, right? So we have tens of thousands of sources where we get data, and a lot of those sources give us structured, but then there's a lot of those that are unstructured as well. So the same process we follow, the done right process I specified, right? The 7 steps, we make every source coming in, we make it go through that process so that we can standardize and create a structure that can then be used for matching and assigning a DUNS number.
Right. And I think just to build on that, extending that to, sort of the Reltio's capabilities and technology, right? First is we should look at what kind of unstructured data and what is the purpose of that, right? Broadly, I would say that there is unstructured data that you might want to actually structure in some way so that it is processable by a machine. It's queryable and things like that. So let's say if I have got annual filings or other kind of things for companies, or I've got product catalog information like product brochures and things like that that I have, and I want to convert that into structured information. That is a capability that we need to have. And again, we look at partner solutions, like in case of the company level information, that is something that DNB already converts into structured form and makes available through its API, right? So we don't have to process that unstructured information. We just have to rely on the right technologies, complementary capabilities, and utilize that in a meaningful way so that it becomes structured and it becomes easily stored, processed, and things like that. Similar capabilities exist even on the product data management side, right? There are technologies available that will actually convert an unstructured product information into a structured product data that can then be stored against a canonical data model that we can provide. The generative AI again creates interesting capabilities where now you can even create information out of unstructured and convert that into a structured form. And we are also looking at incorporating some of those capabilities inside Reltio. The other form of unstructured information is information that you just want to consume in that same form. For example, related documents that you might want to attach, which needs to be consumed downstream when you're looking at a 360-degree information, right? I mean, when you look at an organization, a customer in your organization, for example, you will always have contracts or NDAs that were signed in the past and things like that. These are documents that you would want to see as part of that 360-degree view. And again, we can provide capabilities as to storing that information or links to that information in Reltio that again becomes part of the 360-degree information that you're creating out of Reltio. So that's kind of two different ways to look at it. The unstructured data that you just want to manage as unstructured but linked to a structured piece of information that is available as part of your 360-degree view, versus unstructured data that you really need to structure and store so that it can be processed, queried, and consumed in a structured manner. And each one of those things needs its own capabilities.
Great. Thanks, guys. So when you kind of look at, kind of to another topic area, key capabilities to organize data, so like first party, third party, to improve kind of that trust gap. Can you guys provide insights in how data management needs to differ by industry? So how does Reltio or how does DNB solutions, how are they adaptable to these unique requirements? And Venki, why don't you go first, and then Gurpinder will have you kind of talk about that.
Absolutely. So it's a very relevant topic, right? I mean, how can we take a horizontal set of capabilities and apply it to different industries? Every industry has its own slightly different, maybe unique flavor. So let's start with the most common elements of master data, the common data sets that we find across all companies, right? It falls into 4 categories, essentially. You've got organization data, you've got people-related data or individuals-related data, you have data about products, and you've got data about locations. But depending on which industry you're looking at, for example, take life sciences as an example, right? Our organization might actually be a healthcare organization, a hospital network, or a provider's office and things like that. Whereas if you go to, let's say, an insurance, maybe an organization might be actually a broker organization that actually sells your products and things like that. You can have, even at a more generic level, suppliers, vendors. Those are also organizations, but the nature of business that you do with them and the kind of data that you need for them are probably slightly different. So what Reltio has done is really starting with the business outcomes that companies are trying to drive with data as a starting point. We have identified the key data domains by market segments, by specific industries, and we have created packaged solutions for those data domains that includes the data models, the configurations that are associated with that to improve quality of the data, as well as to define, to manage the metadata and things like that. We call them those our velocity packs. Velocity packs are basically those packaged offerings that will make this process simpler, easier for customers, because we create that for each of the industry segments or market segments. And we curate the core data domains that are utilized, which are all different variants of the underlying 4 types of data, right? Organizations, people, locations, or products, but we make it contextual, we make it specific to the different variations or representations of that, which are specific to that industry. And not only that, then we look at how do we provide prepackaged integrations for bringing the data from typical sources that we see in a given market segment for a given domain. And we also build the enrichment capabilities as a part of it. And this is exactly where we have worked with DNB, right? So we can enable our customers to use DNB data in a seamless manner to enrich organization information, whether it's related to their customer data, supplier data, vendor data, and things like that. And what we will do going forward is, as part of this partnership, we will start looking at even more specific areas, right? Can we apply that to specific industries? Like, is there an opportunity in education? Do we need to actually create specific capabilities around that? Or do we want to create capabilities around ESG, the sustainability, and other kind of initiatives? Again, these are all data sets or capabilities that DNB provides. So our goal would be to make it simpler, easier, faster for our customers by first thinking through what those needs are typical to industry segments and pre-building those capabilities into the product, into the platform that we provide to our customers. And Gurpinder, I'm sure you have more to talk about the specific capabilities DNB itself provides for different industries and different domains.
Yeah, no, definitely, Venki. So I think you captured most of it, right? So the only additional thing I would add is when people think of master data management, right, it's often thought of as a horizontal capability, right? So you start with the foundational data, but then you start, addressing the use cases that master data is being mastered to address, and that's where the verticalization of the data management space comes into play. So to Venki's example, if we are talking to a healthcare provider, they're starting with the basic, patient information or the company information, pharmacy or the hospital. They master that. Now they may need more specified niche type of data that goes on top of it, and that's where DNB comes into play. So we can supply that niche data that can be layered on top of it to help them effectively market and grow that segment for them. Similarly, if you're talking to a transportation company within that industry, you start with the basic foundational mastering, and then now you can layer more specialized data on top of it. And to help us do that, we actually, have built a marketplace where we work with niche market providers to get that specialized data asset so we could put it on top of the DUNS number and the mastered content. And that's what Venki was referring to with ESG, right? So that information can then be made part of the template or the velocity pack that Reltio has recently introduced.
That's great. So kind of going back to thinking about governance, so balancing like data democratization and governance, like privacy, access, regulation. Data breaches and privacy are a major concern for organizations, as we know. How do you guys kind of ensure the highest values of data security while still enabling usability and access? Gurpinder, did you want to take that one first?
Sure. So when it comes to data management and security of the data, I mean, again, data is the key asset that DNB has. So we put a lot of effort around making sure that that data is always secure, right? It comes from multiple sources, and we apply the same level of scrutiny on those sources as well when they bring the data to us. And then there's another layer of scrutiny that gets applied on top of it. And that is just at the data level, the data that we correct. And a lot of that data you could say is, publicly available data, but then there's still elements of it that could be thought of as, not publicly open elements, like the person who works at a business, there might be an email address. If a customer gives us a file and they may send us some private information, which we have to make sure that our systems are capable of either rejecting that data or masking that data so that it's not visible to anyone. So we are compliant with the different, privacy laws in different parts of the world. When we create products that consume data, we have to go through a rigorous process as well, where we have to go through a lot of approvals, sometimes going as high as, to the CEO level, so that we can create a product which is going to touch and manage data assets in a different manner depending on the use case. And some of those things that, the typical things that we put on top of our assets are like the encryptions, making sure we have proper encryption when data is in transit, when data is at rest, right? So there's different levels of encryption. Access controls, we're very, very particular. And in fact, everyone at DNB has to go through privacy certifications on an annual basis and sometimes quarterly basis to make sure that we're aware and compliant with the way we can access and what level of data can we access, right? So there's access controls in place. There's data masking and different types of anonymization capabilities that we deploy to make sure that the data is private. So there's a bunch of other stuff, Chris, that we have deployed internally as a part of our daily workflow to ensure that the data assets we get from our customers and from sources are secure and compliant with various rules and regulations from governance perspective. Venki?
Yeah, so I mean, DNB, so Gurpinder, you talked from the perspective of DNB being a provider of data. I'll take it in a slightly different direction because Reltio provides a software platform which our customers use to manage their data. So what we focus on, of course, is the security aspects and the certification aspects that we have to maintain as a provider, as a platform capability, not as a provider of data itself, right? But from a customer perspective, I think what we need to think of really is what every customer, every company needs to think of is a shared responsibility model, right? So what are the security processes and the checks and balances inside the organization in terms of, who has access to the systems, who has access to the data, at what level of access and things like that. There is the platform or any technology, Reltio being one of them, right? The technologies that you use, you also need to look at what kind of security capabilities do these technologies provide to for you to comply with your security standards or other regulations that you are subject to, right? For example, Reltio offers a HIPAA compliant deployment of its cloud, right? So if a customer actually falls under the purview of HIPAA, then obviously they can trust Reltio to actually store the data in a compliant manner. But that is a question that you will have to consider for every technology that you select based on the compliance regulations and other things that you come under. And then you have to evaluate your vendors against their ability to support or help you support your security and the regulatory requirements, right? And the last but not least is a lot of this data and the data infrastructure is being now built on public cloud. So that is another key aspect to consider, right? The choice that you make in terms of the cloud infrastructure, the cloud service providers, and really understanding their security capabilities and utilizing it in the right manner, drawing out the right boundaries and things like that, right, is another important aspect. So these three layers, looking at your own security mechanisms, security postures, and the requirements from a regulatory perspective, looking at the technology vendors that you utilize and their capabilities to help you support, and then the cloud service providers or other data infrastructure technologies that you're utilizing, and how do you align all of those to support the security needs for yourself.
With the exploding kind of things around AI, ML, all that kind of stuff, how are emerging regulations in different parts of the world affecting the way companies manage data? And how do you kind of help everyone stay compliant? Who wants to answer that first? I'll let.
I can take that first, and Gurpinder, you can add from a more from a data provider perspective, right? Regulations are continuously emerging, right? We keep seeing new things or changes to existing regulations all the time. It sort of goes back to what I said in my previous response as well, related to security, right? Because we touched upon regulatory aspects even there. So I'll sort of build on what I said. We have to continuously look at what those regulations are. We have to look at what is the impact of how we are collecting, managing, and using the data in a compliant manner, in a manner that is compliant to those regulations. And it needs to be looked at for every company, within every industry, and within every geography as well. For example, last year when Reltio introduced its cloud capabilities or extended its cloud capabilities into China, we became the first MLPS compliant SaaS MDM provider to be available in China, right? A lot of global organizations have data sovereignty needs in China. So again, when you have to make a choice about which vendor you go with for managing your data, you have to also look at those aspects, right? Regulations, both in terms of the country data sovereignty and things like that, or from other regulatory organizations or authorities that you fall under. And you have to make those choices in terms of the technology, and you still have to look at your own internal processes to be able to comply with those different regulations as they emerge.
Gurpinder?
Yeah, and just to add to that, I mean, there's many regulations that are we're coming across on a daily basis. So we're always monitoring and making sure that we're following the rules and regulations in different parts of the world. So for example, in Europe, GDPR is the key one, right, for Europe. And to address that, we make sure that we have mechanisms in our process and workflows where people are able to provide consent, and we can manage consent. And if they're not happy, we can take information out. And that goes generically for any DNB data. We give people the ability to tell us whether that data can be made publicly available in our reference data or not. If someone basically decides to opt out, we honor that, and we right away update that information and make sure that that information becomes a part of the non-marketable reference data set that we call, right? So those type of capabilities, I think, are the core capabilities or requirements for any type of regulation that we would come across under data governance umbrella. And the key to that is our products allow people to opt out. They allow them to manage their consent preferences, and they allow them to, have their data deleted if needed on whatever timeframes. And then also similarly, when we create new software products, we have rules and regulations put in place when data is inactive or a customer is no longer using the application. When do we need to delete that data? So all those, Chris, are considered very, very carefully and seriously.
Thank you both. So just kind of to change some of this, or switch over to a little bit about how Reltio and DNB can help. So when you start thinking about like joint solution, customer examples, roadmap, things like that, can you discuss maybe a case study where leveraging complete and connected data significantly transformed a client's business strategy and outcomes? Maybe Gurpinder first, and then we'll have Venki.
Yes. So I am not sure if I can mention the name of the customer, so I'm going to basically refer to them as a customer in hotel management industry that we have a common customer that we worked on together. And the issue that they were having is that, being a global chain of hotels, they have very high worth customers, right? Elite set of customers that they need to manage. And they decided to go with the Reltio and, DNB. They were also a partner or customer of DNB. The key issue and challenge they were running into was that it was just taking too long for them to master and get the value out of the data. So when we worked together and we shared the value proposition with them to showcase that instead of approaching it distinctively, we can tackle it together. So you can use the platform to help you master those, 3,000 or so high worth customers, but then layer on top of it the referential data, the DNB match algorithm, because the DNB match algorithm that we use, it goes beyond just the traditional match rules. It goes through various iterations of historical data. So for example, if a customer previously changed their name, right? So if you feed that information to a system, it would try to match it to some source of information that's sitting in there. If that historical aspect or context is not there, it's not going to be able to match it and bring those two records together. So in this case, DNB allowed them to bring those historical contexts into the picture so that they could holistically look at their customer base and create a list of those high worth customers. And then we went one step further and we deployed the hierarchy information. That's a huge thing in master data management, right? When you're trying to understand how companies are linked to each other, which helps your sales territory planning, it helps with your segmentation and identifying a true net worth of a customer. So with this customer, we work together using Reltio platform as the foundational mastering capability, and then layering on top of it as a part of the core component, the DNB matching and DNB insights, to get to a point where a customer was very quickly able to understand their customers and see the value and execute on various types of nurturing and ABM type of campaigns.
Love it. That was really good. Venki?
Yeah, Gurpinder, I think instead of going into one specific example, Chris, what I will do is I'll just touch upon those areas that Gurpinder mentioned. And the reason for that is, every customer uses Reltio and together with the DNB data in very similar manner. And those possibilities, we keep on expanding the scope of what they can do, right? So first is just filling the gaps in sparse data, because data sometimes what happens is when salespeople are creating new opportunities, they create new accounts in their CRM systems, they may not populate all of the different attributes, and you end up with probably 50 different representations of Microsoft as a customer, right? But ultimately, you need to bring it down to the single, authentic version of the, of the organization, and not just the one representation of Microsoft, but probably every single subsidiary representation of that which you are doing business with. So you also need the almost the legal entity level information and the global, parent or the headquarters, the main version of Microsoft as an organization. So depending on the business needs, you will need that entire hierarchy. You also need to populate the gap so that you can identify which is the true representation of that data. These are all possibilities that Reltio enables through or with DNB capabilities, right? The matching, merging, enrichment, those are the starting points. The next is typically hierarchy so that, customers can define their sales territories and things like that. And there again, they leverage things like the revenue of the company, the size of the company, number of employees in a company, and things like that, in addition to the general sort of attributes like locations and things like that, right? So those are another set of capabilities. And then you get into some enhanced capabilities around, now I want to understand, let's say, certain risk related attributes with respect to the companies that I'm doing business with. If it is a supplier or a vendor and things like that, those are additional set of information that can be sourced through DNB and managed and included as part of the master data in Reltio, and then provided to downstream systems, right? So those possibilities, we keep on extending that to newer areas as we see demand from the market. But these are all things that many of our customers do. So there is a very common pattern that we can look at. That is the reason why the integration that we provide and the out-of-the-box capabilities we provide are very applicable to most customers, because there is a repeatable pattern on how they use the data and how they should use this data in an ideal manner that we were able to incorporate into our product.
I love the case study aspect of this. I've really just got one more question. And then I'll let, if I miss anything, let both of you kind of speak up on that. But kind of looking towards the future, how is Reltio and Dun & Bradstreet preparing for the next big shift in data management? And what do you think it'll be?
Oh, yeah. So the magic ball. So Chris, just again, future is always uncertain, so it's hard to say. But based on the data, because we're talking about data and the patterns that we can pick up from the industry and the data, what we are seeing as an emerging trend in the future is this AI and Gen AI, right? So this is going to continue to come to the forefront. I would go as far as saying we're just in the beginning phase of it. It's going to get to a point where it's going to start interacting with the humans, the robots and the human integration, right? That's going to come into play. So that's one key area that we are trying to understand as we go into it, because data, as we mentioned before, data is the foundation of that collaboration, right? When it comes to people and the machine. So some of the things we're trying to watch out for are all these emerging Gen AI capabilities. How can we leverage those to help improve data management? Some of the things we discussed, like data governance, is there play in data governance of using and automating some of this stuff? Because this is an area where a lot of companies are struggling, right? And that struggle usually comes in because of the lack of resources to form a proper governance structure. Is there an opportunity for us to leverage that Gen AI and technology to help us with that? That's one area. The second is the quality, the data quality, and within the MDM space, right? So data quality is always a problem. And how do we leverage emerging technology to create a mechanism which helps improve data quality on an ongoing basis without human intervention, right? So when you think about data stewardship as an example, data stewardship right now is thought of as, throwing resources at that problem and trying to figure things out. And I talk to customers on a daily basis, and some of those customers are still spending millions of dollars on having a data stewardship team managing and trying to figure records out, right? So is there an opportunity for us leveraging emerging tech to help us improve data stewardship capabilities, where the platform itself can become smart enough and learn on an ongoing basis to help reduce that level of effort from stewardship perspective, right? And then the third thing is the data clouds and the emergence of multi-clouds. A lot of companies are looking at how do I use different capabilities from different clouds, and it's going to continue to become even more prevalent because as the scale of data, increases, the need for having storage, which is cheap, which is fast, which is readily available and accessible to the end user is going to emerge as a need for that as well, right? So we're looking at how is that going to unfold? How do we bring multi-clouds together to create some sort of a hybrid private cloud infrastructure where data can be securely managed and governed? And then just one last thing I would say is, which isn't something which is new, it's been happening for the last couple of years now, is the democratization of data. How do you make it available to the end user in almost real time manner, right? Or near real time manner? Because data becomes stale quickly. And in order to derive value out of it or the insights out of it, the end user needs to have access to it quickly. So within the context of MDM, how do we take that and make it available to the end user in a quick and a timely fashion? Venki?
Love it.
I cannot add anything more to it. That was a near perfect answer, Gurpinder.
All right.
No, but you're right.
Guys,
AI probably is the big thing that we are going through right now, and probably will be the next big thing. The only other thing that I would add, probably a little bit further out into the future. So one is on the last point that you mentioned about making the data accessible to end users. I think data sharing across company boundaries is also going to increase, right? We're already seeing that technologies have emerged that enables easy sharing of data across organizations, even with the necessary controls where you can share selective data without revealing private information and things like that. So that definitely is going to open up new possibilities. I'm really excited about that. The other thing, probably slightly far out into the future, is the concepts like blockchain or those kind of things, which enable more control and self-management of like I'm in control of my data kind of concepts being more prevalently used in this space. But I think it is a little bit farther out.
I think that'd be a great show or webinar to do, is emerging trends, technologies, and focus in on data management stuff. But Gurpinder, did I hit everything around how Reltio and DMB are working together, and anything else that you would want to add to that? Or
yeah, I think we did, Chris. The only other thing I would add is that, as Venki mentioned, we have been in partnership for a while now. And the reason for that is we see the value that we deliver together to a customer. The biggest challenge that people faced with MDM implementation is the time to value extraction, right? So having the right data sources available right within the application, it really expedites their time to value process, right? So they see the value of an MDM system quickly, where they can now utilize the match capabilities that DNB provides and the reference database that we have been talking about, and the niche data that comes as a part of it. So they could quickly demonstrate the ROI to the executives, right? So that's just one point I wanted to highlight. The second thing is, as a part of it, we have been trying to be innovative and address different emerging needs within the data management space. And to that, recently we created a white label product, which Reltio helped us with, called DNB Connect Essential. It's targeted at a smaller end of the customer segment, and it's really designed with with that user in mind, which has the need to manage data, but they don't have the level of complexity and sophistication to get to a fully blown MDM solution, right? So we try to bring the goodness of scale down goodness of the MDM platform along with DNB data to create an atmosphere where they can bring their their customer list into an application, match it, master it, and then quickly get the extracted insight out of the system to make a business decision. So those are some of the things we have launched, and we will always continue to be innovative and look for ways, depending on the customer and the market need, to help address different market segments collectively.
Well, this has been really great. Venki, Gurpinder, thank you so much for your time. Thank you, everyone, for coming to another show. We hope you enjoyed it. Please take a look at the survey at the end and at the end of this, and let us know how we did and what you think. But that's all for today. So thank you, everyone, for coming, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks, Venki. Thanks
Thanks,
all.
everyone. Take
Bye.
care.
Bye.